Want scary stories? Listen.
This story was submitted by a former church volunteer in Louisiana. The names were changed. After the church burned down, officially, the fire was ruled an accident. But people in that town still refused to step onto that land after sunset because some of them swear they could still hear Father Gabriel's voice beneath the ruins of the church. For weeks after his death, Father Gabriel had served at that church for almost 20 years. He baptized children, held funerals, listened to confessions from people moments before they died. Everyone in town trusted him, which is why nobody realized how bad things had become until it was already too late. It happened during a private midnight baptism at a small church outside Baton Rouge. There were only 7 people inside, a mother and her young son, 2 nuns, the groundskeeper, and Father Gabriel himself. But afterward, everyone who survived said the same thing. When the lights went out, the priest came back different from the very beginning. The boy acted strangely. He refused to go near the baptism water. He wasn't crying. He wasn't screaming. He just stared at the priest like he had recognized something horrible. Then, quietly whispered, "That's not him." The adults laughed nervously, and at that exact moment, every light inside the church went out completely for 13 seconds. And when the electricity returned, Father Gabriel was standing at the opposite end of the church, far too far away. Nobody saw him move. He slowly turned toward the people and smiled. But one of the nuns later said his face looked like something inside him was trying to wear his skin. Then the priest spoke, and everyone immediately understood that was no longer a human voice. It sounded like several people whispering from deep inside his throat. At the same time, low, wet, raspy, the boy instantly started screaming, and Father Gabriel slowly stepped toward the baptism basin and said, "You let me inside." And at that exact moment, every candle in the church went out, all at once. The mother grabbed her son and ran for the exit. But before she escaped, she looked back one final time and saw the priest standing motionless in complete darkness, his mouth hanging open far too wide, and something inside him moving. 3 weeks later, the church burned to the ground. Firefighters said there was nobody inside, but locals still swear that on the night of the fire, they heard screaming coming from inside the burning church, and Father Gabriel's voice repeating over and over, "Don't let me back inside." This story came from a police officer in a small town outside Savannah, Georgia. He refused to give his real name. 2 weeks later, the church was permanently sealed by the city. Officially, they blamed mold and structural damage. But nobody from that town believes that, because several people still claim they hear a baby crying inside the church after midnight, even though there are no children there anymore. It happened during a private baptism late one Sunday night. A young couple brought their newborn daughter to the church because the baby had stopped breathing twice that week. The priest agreed to perform the baptism immediately. Only 5 people were inside: the parents, an old nun, the priest, and the church caretaker. From the moment the ceremony started, the baby would not stop staring at the ceiling, not crying, not moving, just staring. Then, suddenly the child started smiling, slowly, directly at something above the altar. The mother looked up. There was nothing there. But the nun quietly whispered, "Don't look at it." Right after she said that, every light inside the church shut off at the exact same moment. The priest dropped the baptism bowl. Water splashed across the floor, and in the darkness, someone started laughing. Not a child, not an adult, something in between. The father grabbed his wife and backed toward the exit. Then the emergency lights turned on, and everybody froze. The priest was no longer standing near the altar. He was at the far end of the church, facing the wall, completely motionless. The caretaker slowly called his name. The priest answered without turning around, but it was not his voice. It sounded deeper, wet, like something speaking through him. Then he said, "She was never alone." The baby instantly began screaming, and the priest started walking toward them. Too fast, not running, but wrong, like his legs were bending strangely with every step. The nun started praying. The lights flickered again, and for 1 second, they all saw another figure standing directly behind the priest, tall, thin, with its mouth hanging open. Then everything went black again. The parents ran. The caretaker ran. Even the nun left the church crying. But the priest never came out. The next morning, police searched the church. They found nobody inside. No priest. No child. No signs of a struggle. Only water surrounding the baptism altar and small, wet, barefoot footprints. They circled around the altar over and over again, like something had been walking there for hours in complete darkness. One of the officers later admitted that before leaving, he heard something from deep inside the church, a quiet child laughing, right behind the locked sacristy door. When they opened it, there was nobody inside, only an old mirror hanging on the wall, and wet handprints pressed against the inside of the glass. 2 days later, the church was permanently closed, but people from that town still say that late at night, the lights inside sometimes turn back on. And if you stop outside the church after midnight, you can sometimes see the priest standing near the altar, completely motionless, holding a child in his arms, and right before the lights inside go dark again. The child slowly turns its head toward the window and smiles. If you want more true horror stories like this, subscribe. We collect terrifying stories from abandoned churches, forgotten towns, and real people across every state in America. And some of them are far worse than this one. New scary stories every week, but be careful listening to them alone at night.